My name's Caleb Rhodes. I was 21 when this happened, junior year at Kent State, trying to make ends meet with late-night driving for a rideshare app. No benefits, no union, but it paid better than stocking shelves, and I could study between trips. Most nights were quiet. Drunks, college kids, the occasional awkward couple silently hating each other in the back seat. Nothing dangerous, nothing that stuck. Until March 3rd. That night was clear but bitter cold. Black ice warnings across Summit County. I had a midterm the next morning and almost logged off around 11:30, but a ping came through. Pick up at a Sunoco on Route 18. Destination just read, private residence. I almost skipped it 30 minutes out of the way, but the app flagged it as priority fare with a bonus. I accepted. The Sunoco was half-lit and surrounded by plowed snowbanks. A guy stood just outside the door. No jacket, just a hoodie and jeans, like the cold didn't touch him. He opened the back door without a word and got in. He was mid-30s maybe, pale skin with sharp cheekbones, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in days. No greeting, just mumbled, "Take me to 412 Shadwell Road." I typed it into maps. 40 minutes southwest. No streetlights, mostly wooded area. "You sure?" I asked. "That's pretty far." He nodded slowly. "Gas money's in the glove box." That stopped me. I opened it. An envelope sat inside, unsealed. Inside was cash. Crisp bills. A lot of them. I shut it without counting. All right. The ride was silent for the first 20 minutes. I tried playing music to break the weird vibe, Fleetwood Mac, something neutral, but he reached forward and clicked it off. "Prefer quiet," he said. "Fine by me." The further we drove, the thinner the traffic got. Neighborhoods gave way to farmland. Houses sat dark with driveways unplowed. Every now and then he mumbled something, never to me. Just soft words under his breath. I caught fragments. "She never left. Still down there. Told him to seal it." Eventually, the GPS said we were 2 minutes away. I glanced at the road. We hadn't passed another car in 10 minutes. Shadwell wasn't a road. It was a trail. Gravel. Ice-covered, framed by trees, stripped bare for winter. No mailbox. No house in sight. "You sure this is it?" I asked again. He leaned forward, eyes wide now. "Yeah, just keep going." The gravel cracked under the tires. Branches scraped the sides of the car. Then I saw it. A house. Or what used to be one. 2 stories, windows busted, porch sagging inward. Looked like it had burned once, maybe decades ago. There were no lights, no signs of life. My foot hovered over the brake. "You live here?" I asked. He smiled for the first time. "No one does." "Not really." I stopped the car. "You can let me off," he said. "Won't be long." I put it in park. "You good getting back?" He stepped out without answering and started walking toward the house. I watched him go, hoodie soaked in moonlight. He moved like someone who'd made up his mind a long time ago. And then something changed. As he reached the porch, I saw another figure step out from behind the house. A woman. Long black coat, face in shadow. She moved toward him slowly. He froze. She didn't speak. Neither did he. I cracked my window to hear something, anything. What I heard was the house. From the second floor, a sound. Boards creaking in rhythm like someone pacing. Then something sharper. Scraping metal, a chain maybe, dragging across the floor. My skin prickled. The woman turned toward the sound. The man turned toward me. Then he shouted, "Go!" I threw the car in reverse. Gravel sprayed. The tires fought for traction, but I backed up, twisted around, and peeled out the way I came. My hands were shaking. I didn't stop driving for 10 minutes. When I did, I pulled off on the shoulder and took a breath. The app was still open. The fare was still active. I tapped Complete Ride to end it, just to close the page. But the screen didn't show the usual rating prompt. Instead, it said, Ride unsuccessful. Rider cancelled. I blinked. Below it, a gray bar. Fare refunded due to rider inactivity. I checked the earnings. 0. Weird. I thought maybe he'd faked the request. Maybe used a stolen card. But the envelope with the cash, at least a couple hundred, was still in my glove box. I drove home, locked every door, and barely slept. I told myself I'd imagined the second figure, that it was an animal or tree shadows, that maybe the guy was on something, or just mentally ill. But 2 days later, I got a message through the app. It wasn't from a user, just a system alert. You recently picked up a rider from an unverified location. For your safety, please avoid requests originating from 970 Route 18. 970 Route 18, the Sunoco. I looked it up. There was a Sunoco on Route 18, but it had closed 3 years ago, burned down in an arson. No survivors. The report listed 2 victims, a man and a woman. I scrolled through the article. There was a picture, surveillance stills from inside the store the night of the fire. I stopped breathing. The man, same hoodie, same sunken eyes. The woman in the coat behind the counter. She wasn't a stranger. She was his wife. I don't drive anymore. Not at night. Not for money. Not for anyone. Because somewhere out there, down Shadwell Road, that house still stands. And every so often the app pings me. Same pickup. Same destination. And I don't know if the ride is for him or for me. I never believed in haunted objects until the night I brought home a doll that changed everything. When I was 10, my parents planned a family trip to a tiny mountain town. It was the kind of place where the streets were quiet, the houses looked aged by decades, and the people seemed to carry secret histories in their eyes. I was excited to explore, but even as we drove up the winding road, I could feel something strange in the air. An old, heavy kind of silence that pressed down on you. One afternoon, we stumbled across a small antique shop, hidden between a closed-down diner and a weathered bookstore. The sign was faded, and the windows were dust-covered, but curiosity pulled me inside. The air smelled of cedar and old paper, and the dim light cast long shadows across the cluttered shelves. There were hundreds of things in that shop. Rusty tools, cracked teacups, old jewelry, and rows upon rows of dolls. But these weren't the cheerful, colorful dolls you'd expect. They were porcelain, pale and delicate, with faces so lifelike it was unsettling. Their eyes glistened glassily, staring blankly as if watching you. My eyes settled on one doll, a little girl in a threadbare blue dress with faded lace trim. Her porcelain skin was flawless, her cheeks rosy but cold, and her hair was dark, almost black. She held a small stuffed fox, whose button eyes looked worn and dull. The shopkeeper told us she was found abandoned in an old cabin near the edge of town, but no one knew who she belonged to or why she was left behind. Even as the shopkeeper spoke, a chill ran down my spine. Something about the doll felt wrong. But I didn't care. I wanted to bring her home. My parents hesitated, but eventually they relented. Maybe they thought it was just a harmless keepsake or that I would soon lose interest. I took the doll home, placed her carefully on a shelf in my bedroom, and went to bed. That first night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt a weight pressing down on my chest. When I dared to open them, the doll's glass eyes seemed to gleam in the dark. I told myself it was just shadows playing tricks on me, but the feeling didn't go away. The nights that followed only got worse. I began to hear faint noises, footsteps pacing just outside my door, soft whispers I couldn't understand, and the faint creak of my closet door moving on its own. I would lie awake for hours, heart hammering, staring at the doll as if it might suddenly move. One night I woke up to a sharp tapping sound on my bedroom window. When I looked, there was nothing there but the dark silhouettes of trees swaying in the wind. The tapping continued, irregular and persistent, as if someone was trying to get my attention. I was frozen with fear. The worst was the closet. I always left my bedroom door shut at night, but the closet door, that one I left cracked open because I was too scared to fully close it. I could feel eyes on me every time I looked toward it. Sometimes I thought I saw a shadow move just inside. I tried telling my parents, but they dismissed it as nightmares or imagination. They said it was just my mind playing tricks in the dark, but I knew better. Something was wrong. Something was living in my room, and it was connected to that doll. One afternoon, while my family was out, I decided to examine the doll closely. Maybe understanding it would help me feel less afraid. As I picked her up, her glass eyes reflected the sunlight, and I swear for a split second they blinked. I dropped the doll in shock. Then, as if to mock me, the tiny stuffed fox slipped from her hand and landed on the floor with a soft thump. I was trembling. That night, I begged my older brother to stay with me. I told him everything: the footsteps, the whispers, the closet door, the doll's blinking eyes. He was skeptical at first, but agreed to sleep in my room. That night, something happened we both couldn't explain. Around 2 a.m., we woke up to a cold draft that swept across the room. Our eyes darted to the closet door. It was swinging wide open, creaking slowly, as if inviting something out. Suddenly, a low whispering filled the room, like voices speaking just out of earshot. Our flashlight beams found the doll sitting on the floor inside the closet, eyes shining eerily. The stuffed fox was gone. Terrified, we grabbed the doll and ran out of the room, locking the door behind us. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I knew I couldn't keep the doll anymore. I had to get rid of it. But where? I took the doll to my grandmother, the only person in my family who understood things like this. She was a deeply spiritual woman, quiet, with an air of calm authority, and a lifetime of stories about spirits, hauntings, and restless souls. When I showed her the doll, her face grew pale, and she whispered, "This is no ordinary doll." She explained that sometimes spirits can become trapped in objects, especially items left behind, lost, or abandoned with pain. The spirit in this doll was angry and confused, tethered to the physical world by a past trauma no one knew. She told me the only way to free the spirit was to return the doll to the place where it was found, the old cabin outside the mountain town. So, one chilly autumn evening, my grandmother and I set out on a journey back to that remote cabin. The sun was dipping below the mountains, casting long shadows through the dense trees. The forest was eerily silent except for the crunch of our footsteps on fallen leaves. The cabin looked worse than I remembered: broken windows, rotting wood, and an air of abandonment that made my skin crawl. I held the doll tightly as we stepped inside. The air inside was cold and heavy, like the breath of something unseen. My grandmother began to chant softly, invoking peace and release. The doll seemed to shudder in my hands. Then a strange sound echoed, half a sigh, half a moan, from deep within the walls. For a moment I thought I saw the doll's eyes glow with an unnatural light. Suddenly the door slammed shut behind us. The cabin seemed alive with movement, shadows danced on the walls, and the wind howled through the broken panes. I wanted to run, but my grandmother stayed calm, continuing her prayers. Slowly, the tension in the room lifted, and the cold receded. Finally, she placed the doll on the floor and whispered, "Go now, and find your peace." We left the cabin and drove away without looking back. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully, without fear or whispers in the dark. Years later, I still remember that doll. I never bought another porcelain doll again. And though I don't know what spirit was trapped inside, I know this much. Some things are better left alone, and some objects carry more than just memories. If you ever come across a doll with glass eyes that seem to follow you, be careful, because sometimes the past doesn't stay buried, and sometimes it comes home with you. It was a foggy Sunday night in rural Arkansas, quiet, dead quiet, the kind of silence you don't trust. I had just wrapped up my shift and was heading back to the station when a dispatch came through. A 911 call had been dropped midway, with only a few audible words. "He's got a gun." That was it. The call pinged to a farmhouse on Old County Road 14, about 12 miles out. I let dispatch know I'd take it. Backup was on another call across the county, so I was on my own. But I'd done this 100 times before. Domestic disturbance, probably a drunk argument. I wasn't too worried until I saw the house. It was a rundown, single-story place. No porch lights, no sound, nothing. The front yard was overgrown, and an old Dodge truck sat crooked in the gravel driveway with the driver's side door wide open. That sent a chill through me. I radioed in that I'd arrived and stepped out of the cruiser. The night air was heavy. You know that feeling in your gut when something's just wrong? Yeah, I had that in spades. I approached the house slowly, hand resting on my holster, flashlight scanning the yard. I noticed drag marks, fresh ones, in the dirt, leading toward the side of the house. That's when I heard it. A faint thump from inside. Not loud, not sharp, just deliberate. I knocked on the front door and announced myself. No answer. I knocked again, harder. Nothing. So I circled around the back. That's where I found the back door, cracked open. I called out again. Still nothing. So I stepped inside. The house smelled like mildew and something else. Coppery. The kind of smell you don't forget. The kitchen was trashed, a shattered plate on the floor, a smear of something red on the wall near the fridge. I took another step in and heard it again. That same thump, closer now, from the hallway ahead. I made my way down the hall, passing family photos on the walls. A man and a woman with a little girl, smiling, frozen in time. The door at the end of the hall was shut, and that's where the sound had come from. I called out again. No answer. I tried the doorknob. Locked. That's when I heard it. A whisper from the other side of the door. Help me. I kicked the door in. The room was a child's bedroom, painted soft blue, with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. A lamp was knocked over, flickering. In the corner, the woman from the photos was sitting on the floor, hands zip-tied behind her back, duct tape over her mouth, eyes wide with terror. Blood stained her shirt. I ran to her and ripped the tape off. "He's in the basement," she said. "He has my daughter." I called it in, voice shaking. Dispatch said backup was on the way, but at least 15 minutes out. I didn't have 15 minutes. I found the basement door in the kitchen, padlocked from the outside. The chain was still warm. Whoever was down there was still down there. I cut the lock with bolt cutters I kept in my cruiser and pulled the door open. A cold, damp draft hit my face. I drew my weapon and descended slowly, flashlight leading the way. The basement was bigger than I expected. It opened up into a wide space with old furniture covered in sheets. In the center of the room was a single chair, empty. I heard a creak behind me. I turned fast, but no one was there. Then, from the shadows, a voice. "You shouldn't have come alone." I whipped around to where the sound came from, but it was like it echoed from the walls. That's when I saw him, tall, wearing a black hoodie, face hidden in shadow, standing just outside the reach of my flashlight. "Where's the girl?" I shouted. He didn't answer. He just stepped back into the darkness and vanished. I moved forward slowly, scanning every corner. Then I saw it, a door at the far end, half open. I approached and pushed it open with my foot. The girl was there, tied to a chair, gagged, crying, alive. I holstered my weapon and ran to her, working to untie her as fast as I could. That's when I heard it again, footsteps behind me. I turned just as the man lunged at me with a hunting knife. We fell back into the concrete floor. The girl screamed. We struggled. He slashed at me, catching my vest, then my arm. I managed to elbow him hard in the face and get some space. I drew my gun and fired once. Center mass. He collapsed, groaning, but he was still breathing. I called for an ambulance and waited with the girl, holding pressure on her wrists where the rope had cut her skin. My arm throbbed, bleeding badly, but I didn't care. She was alive. When backup arrived, they took him into custody. His name was Colin Reese. He had a record, kidnapping charges dismissed years ago on a technicality. He'd been living out of his truck, stalking the family for weeks. The mother told us later that he'd broken in through the back, knocked her out, and dragged the daughter to the basement. She came to and managed to crawl to the kitchen to dial 911 before he found her again and zip-tied her. If I'd shown up 10 minutes later, I don't want to think about it. Colin never spoke another word after that night. Not in court, not to his lawyer, not to the press. Just sat in silence. He pled not guilty, claimed he didn't remember anything. The trial's still ongoing. The little girl, her name's Ellie, she's okay now. Her mom moved them to another state under a new name. I get a card from them every Christmas. Says, "Thank you for showing up when no one else could. I kept the knife, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that evil doesn't always come in the form of monsters or demons. Sometimes it drives an old Dodge truck and wears a hoodie. I still work the night shift, still answer calls when no one else will, but I never go in alone anymore, and I always trust that feeling in my gut." I don't take vacations often. Between work and life, I never really made the time. But after my breakup last fall, I needed to get away from the city, clear my head, maybe feel like a person again. I found this rental on a site I'd never heard of. Not Airbnb, but something smaller, more niche. The listing caught my eye because it looked simple. No Wi-Fi, no smart TV, just a little A-frame cabin near a lake in Vermont. The description said, "Perfect for solitude, nature, quiet, reflection." Exactly what I thought I needed. The host's name was Martin. He had a couple reviews. They were vague, just said things like peaceful and would stay again. No pictures of the hosts themselves. That didn't bother me. I booked it for a Thursday to Sunday, mid-October. Leaves were changing, air was crisp. When I got there around 5 p.m., the sky was already starting to dim. The road to the cabin was a narrow dirt path off the main highway, lined with trees that looked like they hadn't seen another car in weeks. The cabin was small but clean, dark wood exterior, a little porch swing, one of those fake deer lawn ornaments out front. Keys were in a lockbox. No one came to greet me, which I actually liked. The quiet hit me the second I stepped out of the car. No traffic, no voices, not even birds. Just wind in the branches and the soft groan of old trees. Inside was cozy, a wood stove, 2 chairs, a kitchenette. There was a guest book on the table. Real paper, not digital. Leather-bound. I flipped through it while sipping coffee. People had scribbled notes like "Great stay," "Beautiful stars," "Hope to return." One entry stood out. It just said, "Didn't feel alone." No name, no date. That night, I sat on the porch with a blanket and a mug of something hot, staring out at the lake. The moon was big and yellow, reflecting off the water. I didn't hear a single sound. Not even crickets. It was peaceful, but it also made the hairs on my neck stand up. Too quiet. Around midnight, I was brushing my teeth in the tiny bathroom when I heard something on the porch. Just a creak, like someone had stepped on one of the old floorboards. I froze, waited, then peeked out the bathroom window. Nothing. The swing was still. The trees didn't move. But I know what I heard. I went to bed but didn't sleep much. Kept thinking I heard footsteps on the gravel outside. But when I looked, there was no one. Friday, I went for a short hike down by the lake. There was a canoe tied up at the dock, old and faded. I took a few pictures, tried to appreciate the scenery, but I couldn't shake the feeling from the night before, that I wasn't alone. Back at the cabin, I made dinner, read a little, and tried to ignore how the shadows in the trees seemed to shift more than they should have. I told myself it was my mind playing tricks. That night, I locked all the doors and kept the curtains drawn. At 2 a.m., I woke up to knocking. 3 slow knocks on the front door. I sat up in bed, heart racing. It wasn't loud, but it was deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't move, just listened. After about a minute, I heard the porch swing creak again. Then silence. I stayed awake until dawn. The next morning, I noticed footprints in the dew-covered grass leading from the trees to the porch. Bare feet, long strides. Whoever it was, they hadn't come from the road. I wanted to leave. I really did. But my car battery was dead. I don't know how. I hadn't left the lights on. It just wouldn't start. No cell signal, no landline in the cabin. I figured I'd try knocking on the nearest neighbor's door, but the only house marked on the map was 5 miles down the main road. I started walking, but after about a mile, I saw something that made me stop cold. Another cabin, smaller than mine. No road leading to it, just sitting there, deep in the woods, like it had been dropped in by accident. I don't know why I approached it. Curiosity, I guess. The windows were blacked out. The door had a chain. But on the porch, there was a table. And on the table, another guest book. Same kind as the one in my cabin. I opened it. The first few pages were full of the same kind of notes. Thank you for a lovely stay. So peaceful here, that sort of thing. But the entries got darker. I heard someone breathing outside. Why can't I leave? Please, if anyone sees this, don't stay here. Don't sleep. The last entry had no handwriting, just a red fingerprint pressed into the page. I backed away from the cabin and ran. All the way back to mine. I packed my stuff, threw it in the car even though it wouldn't start. Sat behind the wheel with the doors locked. That night, I didn't sleep. I just stared out the windshield at the tree line. Around 3 a.m., I saw a light. It was coming from the woods. A soft glow moving slowly between the trees, like someone walking with an old lantern. Not a flashlight. A lantern. Golden flickers that danced between branches. Then I saw a figure. Tall. Barefoot. Just watching me from the edge of the forest. I couldn't see his face, but he was holding something in his hand. I don't know how long we stared at each other. Maybe minutes. Maybe hours. Then he turned and disappeared into the trees. By morning, my car started. No explanation. I didn't ask. I drove straight back to the city. Didn't stop. Didn't breathe until I saw a Dunkin' Donuts and power lines. I tried to report the cabin, but the listing was gone. The site itself doesn't even exist anymore. I tried every way I could think of to find it. Nothing. Sometimes I dream about that guest book, the one with the red fingerprint. Sometimes I wake up thinking I hear knocking. 3 slow knocks. And every time I think of that word someone wrote in the book. Didn't feel alone. Neither did I.